4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning. Good morning. You're supposed to be quiet. You broke your rules. No, welcome to the second day. I hope that you've relaxed, getting yourself accustomed to the routine. And thank you also for all of you who have come to the interviews and have asked your questions on pieces of paper. Sorry I couldn't answer more of those questions, but the questions are always endless. But you just answer one or two, and that seems to be fine because it gives you more Dhamma and you take control of the subject matter. Because as a Buddhist monk, you've found out already, all I ever want to talk about is jhanas and deep stuff, because that really inspires me. But sometimes you have to talk things which are relevant to everybody. I know a few of you have mentioned to me that you may be a Buddhist, but some of your family members may not be. So how do you deal with that? And I always remember this story of this Christian priest, and he was asked a question, after his sermon in the church from a professor of theology. And this professor was very, very learned and very influential. So the priest really just had to think of a good answer. And the question was that he said in his sermon that only Christians can go to heaven. He said, but was many other great people in this world who weren't Christians. People like the Buddha, people like Marcus Aurelius, people like Socrates, people like Gandhi, people like Martin Luther. Was he Christian? Well, he wasn't Catholic anyway. What happens to those people when they die? Do they go to heaven, or what happens to them? And at least the priest was smart enough to say, well, there's not much time today to answer that question. If in doubt, procrastinate. And if you don't like procrastination, then put off procrastination until tomorrow. Okay, some people know what procrastination means. So anyway, he said, I'll answer it next week. And so usually on the day after the priests work on a Sunday, they have a day off on Monday. They're really lucky. Buddhist monks, we never have a day off. We never have a sabbatical. We never have a holiday. People don't understand this. Sometimes when there's a big holiday, a free weekend, that's when people come to the monastery more than ever. They're on holiday, but not us. But anyway, so on a Tuesday, he went to see one of his friends, a senior priest, and the priest said, that's such a difficult question to answer, especially to someone like a professor from a university. You can't just tell a joke to someone like that. This is serious. He said, go and see the bishop. So on Wednesday, he made an appointment with the bishop, and the bishop said, that's too difficult for me. Go and see the archbishop. So on Thursday, he saw the archbishop, and the archbishop said, no, that's way too difficult. Go and see the cardinal. So he went to see the cardinal and said, no, look, that really is just such a tough question. Go and see the professor. Not this professor, another professor, and maybe get some answer from him. And sure enough, the academic, the professor, gave an answer, but he couldn't understand a word of it. Does that ring any bells? Yeah. So anyhow, so Saturday night, he still hadn't got an answer. And that evening, he hardly slept, worried. What can he give us a good answer to one of his new congregation who was a professor? And so He hardly slept that night. And what a good religious person would do. He got up early in the morning and he went into the church to ask for help. And because he hadn't slept that night at the altar, he fell fast asleep. And as he was sleeping, he had a dream. And in the dream, he was at a train station. And at that train station, there was a train about to leave. And he kind of knew, even though it was a dream, intuitively, he asked the railway porter on the platform, that train, it wouldn't be going to heaven, would it? And the porter looked at him and said, yes, it's going to heaven. Seeing as you're a priest, you can get a free ticket. So he got on the train. In no time at all, the train arrived in this other platform. And on that platform, he saw the sign, Heaven. He'd arrived in heaven. And as he got off the train, he walked over to someone and said, excuse me, sir, what's this place called? And the man said, oh, this is heaven. Welcome. And the priest asked, how long have you been here? And the man said, oh, hundreds of years, thousands of years. Great, you're the very person I need to ask this question. Up here in heaven, is there anyone up here by the name of Buddha? And the man said, never heard of the fellow. What about Socrates? Socrates, no, haven't heard of him. What about Marcus Aurelius? Gandhi, a little Indian fellow? Nope, haven't heard of him. What about Gandhi? Yeah. He said, haven't heard of any of them. And he thought, I have my answer. There is none of these people can go to heaven. I've been up there. I was so happy, contented with what I got so far, that when he went to get the train back to this world, he saw there was another train in another platform. Again, he knew intuitively where that train was going. So he asked the station master, that train over there, it wouldn't be going to a place called hell, would it? And the station master said, yes, it's going to hell. So he bought himself a return ticket this time. Got on the train. In no time at all, it arrived in another platform, and he could actually see the sign there, Hell. But it wasn't just a sign there. There was a nice welcome to hell. And it's balloons, multicolored balloons on the platform or on the sign. And as soon as he got off the train, somebody came up and said, welcome, sir, welcome. How long you can stay for? You must be very tired. Do you want to sit down? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a cup of coffee? Do you want something to eat? We've got some wonderful noodles. We've got some wonderful banana cake for you. And he said, well, thank you very much, but no. How long have you been here? Said, oh, I've been here for years and years and years and years, said this person. Look, you must be very thirsty and very tired. Have a sit down. And the priest was very, very confused. He said, are you sure this is hell? Yeah, it is. Welcome. Sure you don't want anything to drink? He said, yeah, well, maybe later on. But first of all, over here, is there anyone by the name of Buddha? Oh, the Buddha. So wise, so compassionate, so wonderful. Oh, yeah. He's one of the probably the most famous person down here. What about Gandhi, Marcus Aurelius, Socrates? Oh, Socrates, he's so wise. Now, there's a punchline to this, so don't worry. I'm not going to... I'm not going to be excommunicated from Buddhism because of this story. And then the priest said, now, according to my scriptures, this is what's supposed to be. That all these people, they didn't believe in Jesus and they're just down here in hell. But there's something which is really strange. According to my scriptures, said hell is a place of torture and torment and lots of suffering and lots of pain. But everyone down here is so happy. They're more happy and more loving than up in heaven. And this man said, well, actually, it used to be a place of torture and torment and people being cruel to each other before the Buddha came down here. And of course, that you can't find that anywhere in the sutras. I'm making that up. But nevertheless, it makes this point. It's a people who create the place. It's not the place that creates the people. So that's a wonderful story. In this retreat, is it a happy retreat so far? If it is, it's not, please excuse me, not because of the Novotel Hotel. It's because of the people who look after you and each one of you. That's what makes a heaven. The place where you work, your company, your offices, is that a difficult place to work? If it is, it's not the company, it's not the office, it's the people. The people make the place, not the place makes the people. And that's a lovely thing to understand. Even I teach that story whenever I used to go and teach in prisons in Western Australia. These men were in prison, in jail. Is that a terrible place to be? Is it? I don't know about here, but in West Australia, I remember talking to some of these prisoners. Actually, it wasn't me, it was one of the other monks who was taking over from me. And they liked the monk. Monks have some great positive energy, and they're kind, non-judgmental. And so they asked the monk just to stay a little bit longer. They found out what a monk can drink. You know, they can drink some tea, some coffee, add some cheese and chocolate and all sorts of things for this monk. Because they wanted to have a chat with him. It's not just like talking Dhamma or teaching meditation. They wanted to kind of connect with him. That's one of the reasons why I find it really easy to teach a retreat and teach meditation to you, because I've known many of you for such a long time. We've already got a connection. And they didn't have the connection with this monk, so they wanted to ask him, what's it like being a monk in Australia? What do you do? And so he started off, well, we get up at 4 a.m. And at that, the prisoners were shocked. Wow, even murderers don't have to get up at that time. What bad karma did you do to have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning? And he said, and it's true, he said, in those days, you don't have to get up at 4 o'clock. That's optional. You can always get up earlier if you want to. Okay. But then what do you do at 4 o'clock? You get up early in the morning, and then what do you do? Can you turn on the TV and watch a midnight movie or something? We don't have TVs in monasteries. So what do? We meditate. Okay, fair enough. You're monks, you meditate. What about breakfast? Now, I think you all know that you really feed me well over here. Ever since I went traveling and teaching overseas, that's where this came from. But you know, for years, I haven't put on weight. You get to your maximum and you can't put on weight anymore. But anyhow, so in those days, all we would have is like a mug for tea, and maybe 3 Weetabix, and that was it. Nothing else. No banana cake for breakfast. and, but then, said, actually, I'm not sure what it's like in prisons in Hong Kong, but prisons in Australia, I've seen it. They have a big feast, anything you like. You know, if you're Italian, you get Italian breakfast. If you're Chinese, you can get sort of noodles, dumplings, rice porridge. What else do you like? Banana cake? Double? Okay, whatever. And they say, wow, it's so tough over in monastery. But then what do you do after breakfast in a monastery? Actually, we don't meditate after breakfast. We work. Any of you have seen Bodhinyana monastery, you would know, and I can prove it, get the piece of paper out. I built a lot of that. That's where the story of the 2 bad bricks in the wall came from. You know, we couldn't afford a builder. So, you know, I had to learn how to lay bricks from theoretical physics to bricklaying. But you don't mind. Honestly, each one of you can do anything. And so I decided to learn how to lay bricks. Had all the time in the world because I wasn't being paid. You know, you put some water down, put the brick on top, make sure it's in the right place, turn it around this way, that way, tap it down. But even though I was careful, when I finished my first brick wall, I stood back to admire it. My first brick wall, the first time I'd actually built something. It was only then when I saw 2 of those bricks were crooked. They really stood out. And to this day, I cannot understand how it was I missed them. But nevertheless, they spoiled the whole wall. So with the water, I tried to, with the trowel, I tried to scrape the mortar out. But it was so hard. I couldn't move the mortar. It already set. And there was another monk with me at that time. And honestly, I asked him, can we buy some dynamite? I wanted to blow the wall up so I could start again. But, you know, we couldn't afford it. And I was stuck with the first wall I'd ever built. It was a big mess. I was so embarrassed. If you'd have put something underground like pipes, no one could see that. You'd bury it afterwards. But a wall, everyone could see that. And we were really struggling to get enough money to sort of build a monastery. And I thought, when our donors see that, they're not going to spend their money on a monastery whose monks can't even build a straight brick wall. I was embarrassed, depressed. I was depressed in the sense I would wake up in the middle of the night having a nightmare about my wall. I go past it. Weird thing is, when you went past it, my eyes would straight away go to those 2 crooked bricks. For 3 months, I suffered. And then after about 3 months, for those who don't know the story, this man came to visit. And I usually try to be the tour guide so I can take people to another place. They can't see my mistakes. But this man saw them. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be embarrassing. And he said, what a beautiful brick wall. And that shocked me. Sir, are you blind? Are you visually impaired? Have you left your spectacles in your car? He said, no. So can't you see the two bad bricks? And he said, yes. But I can also see the 998 perfect bricks. And you've heard that story many times before, but I don't mind telling it again because it's a powerful story. Number one, I'd only made two faults. 990 bricks were perfect. Why was I always looking at the faults, the bad bricks? Why was that? And why was I blind to all the beautiful bricks in the wall? I literally could not see the beautiful bricks. All I could see is my faults. And honestly, many of you often do the same. All your kindness, your service, the wonderful things you do for your family, for the world, we just take that as for granted. You make one or two mistakes and you dream about it at night time and wake up with a nightmare. That wall is still there. Two bad bricks are still there. But after I told that story, first of all, for years I couldn't find them anymore. They weren't that bad. It's just that when you have negativity, two bad bricks become just terrible. And of course, you know that story. Why do some people get upset at one another? They see two bad bricks in your partner, in your wife, your husband, in your kids, in your parents. It's only two bad bricks. We told that story a lot. It works. And even in a prison, one of the prisons my monks go to just down the road from our monastery, they were telling me that one of the people they were teaching meditation to was in prison for murder. And he was always really depressed. And now he's heard that story. He's no longer depressed. Apparently he's going around jail telling everybody, it was only two bad bricks, only two murders. All those people are never murdered. That's not a joke either, that's true. You know, he's doing his time for the murder, but at least when he's released, he will never do anything like that ever again. So he does a punishment, but at least he learns his mistakes. So that's what we do. We do building work. But it's not just building work. You get a lot of Dhamma from what you do. You know, for those of you who've seen our main hall up in Bodhinyana Monastery, you know, it's a really incredibly peaceful hall. You know who the builder of that was? Me. I built that. I was a builder. Afterwards, the local shy councillors say, please don't tell anybody that, because it was a public hall. You know, you have to get a proper builder with a proper license. But it's been fine, no trouble at all. But you know what happened first of all? Again, with the monk I was with, this is one time we did have an argument. He wanted to build it one way. I wanted to build it another way. You know, I was sure I was right. He was sure he was right. So we had this standoff for 3 or 4 days. This was going to be our main hall. It's important. So for a while, the last day, we didn't even talk to each other. We just, put notes under each other's doors. It was crazy. But then, I had a moment of inspiration. So what we do if we do stupid things, have arguments with one another. I was a young monk at the time. And I got a tray of flowers and incense and candles, knocked on the door of his room, said, I've come to ask forgiveness. And he knew I was a very smart monk. So he was a bit dubious at first. He said, "You really?" I said, "Yeah, I want to ask forgiveness. But once I've asked forgiveness, I want to ask a favor of you." And he was dubious, rightly so, and said, "Once I ask forgiveness, I want your permission to be the builder of that hall according to your plans." And he was taken aback by that. "I'm not just going to say sorry. I'm going to build it exactly the way you want it, as a good lesson for me not to argue and to realize harmony is more important than getting it right." And to this day, it's a nice hall, but it was expensive. If he'd have done it my way, we'd have saved a lot of money and it would be far better. It didn't matter. What was more important than having a nice hall was having harmony, having peace. And so we had a much better relationship as the first and second monk together. And I must admit that that's when you see the hall, you don't see that part of it, where it came from. That's why I like telling that story. Totally true. And just how you don't have to be right to be happy. But also that hall, over the years, so many good monks and nuns have been in that hall. So much meditation has gone on in there. Such great talks and sermons in Bodhinyana Hall. That's a very powerful place. Even, I'm not sure if they were from Hong Kong, but somebody brought their Feng Shui master over to visit. And their Feng Shui master went inside the hall and he was blown away. This hall has got some of the strongest Feng Shui they'd ever seen in his life, especially in the front of the hall, not so much in the back, but the front is really powerful. And honestly, many people who go on a retreat over in Jhana Grove, their meditation is not so good. And I say, go over to Bodhinyana Hall, go and sit in there. Wow. It has so much power, they can't resist it, and they get very still and have beautiful meditations. And I'm saying that because, again, that is true. I'm not exaggerating. So that's what we do. We build it. We build it as other people want it, not as I want it. Not the best way, but good enough. So we work hard in the mornings. And then we have our lunch. Our lunch, you've seen us have our lunch usually, before, has to be finished before noon. So over there, we usually have our lunch about 11 o'clock. We do an arms round first of all. We eat out of a bowl like we did, well, it wasn't really like we did at the Theravada Buddhist Society, where we ate out of bowls. But sometimes in those days, other people will put the food in the bowl. So that is where one day I had spaghetti bolognese with strawberry ice cream on top. That's what I remember another time that they worked for some custard company. So we had all this custard. And then it was so much in the bowl. It was really hard actually to hold the bowl as we dished it out to the other monks. And sometimes we'd go in the wrong place, go on top of the curry. Have you ever had curry with custard on top? What's the problem? It all gets mixed up inside the tummy anyway. You just mix it up outside beforehand. And the prisoners were really disgusted at that. Even in solitary confinement, you still have a little tray pushed through the hole in the door with different compartments for different types of food. I said, that's disgusting. Say, well, what else do you do? What do you do after lunch? Well, the monks can have a rest if they need to, or they do some more meditation, do some of their chores. I said, well, can't you play sport? What sport do you think I would be good at now? Sumo wrestling? Oh, come on, have a sense of humor. I laugh at myself. You can laugh at me too. Even when I was at university, at Cambridge, I did represent Cambridge in one sport against Oxford, the university match. What sport was it? No, not soccer. That was too serious. Not rowing. No, that was serious too. Not swimming. Sinking, maybe. Look, when I was young, I was never competitive. One soccer match I did play, just I think the third team for the college. I was much better than the third team, but I didn't like to compete. I just wanted a nice game. And one day, 9 of the opposition turned up. All 11 of us turned up. And it was a stupid score at the halftime, about 6 or 7-0. So I asked my captain, can I go and play for the other side on the second half? It was only a silly game. He said, no. And that was the last game of soccer I played. If you're taking it serious and it's not for fun, I don't want to join in. And these days, you see people playing sport, and sometimes they cheat. They have professional fouls and all sorts of stuff. I don't know why people want to play that. It's much better if you're playing and enjoying yourself. Good exercise, having a lot of fun, making friends. Anyway, that wasn't the sport I represented my university at. I'm sure you must have heard, Gerald, what that sport was. You know? I don't even know if you know actually what the sport is. Ask your kids and they might know. Tiddlywinks. Tiddlywinks have a little pot and these little counters, and you flip one into the pot. And if you cover the opposition's counter, that's called a squab. And had lots and lots of rules for this. And they play that at university. It was totally ridiculous. Needed no training. And that was its great advantage, selling point. You couldn't take it seriously. And so that was a sort of game where you could make friends and have just a nice, easy time. So anyway, no, we don't play sports, especially as monks. Can you imagine what would happen if we did play sports? Suppose we played cricket. Now, sometimes if you bowl a ball and you're a good monk, sometimes the batsmen see it coming towards them, and suddenly the ball goes that way, and that way, and hits the wicket. Those psychic powers. What if you do athletics? The monks could win the high jump gold medal, no trouble at all, the ones who can levitate. Would that be cheating? But even if we did have a proper soccer team, we'd have to play by Buddhist principles, which means, number 1, let go of the ball. Let them have the ball. Non-violence. We don't go tackling people. And number 3, compassion. So if the other team can't score a goal, we'll score an own goal for them. That would be playing by Buddhist principles. And that is the reason why you never see countries like Thailand in the World Cup soccer. There's too many Buddhists there. Anyway, so no, we don't play sport. We just meditate, maybe read. So what about dinner? What do you monks have for dinner? Dinner? We don't have dinner. We just eat in the morning time. No dinner, no supper, no snacks in the afternoon, evening, or night time. No. Sometimes we can have a cup of tea, but that's about it. What about in the evening, at night time? Can you play cards, like poker? No, that's not what a monk does. I must tell this story. It's actually, what I'm saying is not what I planned to say about this morning's talk, but who cares? I think you're enjoying it. At least I am. You know, once over in a Western country, there were these different religious leaders. They wanted to meet together to create some harmony and so understand each other, because that was important. So first of all, they'd meet for a cup of coffee in the morning. It was a Jewish rabbi and a Christian priest and a Buddhist monk. So they met for coffee in the morning, but then again, the conversation never went that deep. They weren't kind of challenging each other. So they couldn't have lunch because it was too difficult for the monk. So they decided to meet in the afternoon and play little games. And then they said it was too difficult to find a game which everyone could do. So in the end, they started playing cards. It was only not for gambling for money, but just gambling to make it interesting. And in that jurisdiction, that was illegal to gamble. So the three of them got arrested. And they had to go to court. And the judge said, this is a strange case. 3 religious leaders in charge with gambling. And so he took the first person up, the Christian priest, said, look, you're a priest, I respect you, so I'm just going to ask you, were you gambling? And really quickly, the judge couldn't even notice it. He looked up and he said, Jesus, forgive me. He said, no. Okay, off you go. You're free. Then he got the rabbi in the dock. Rabbi, were you gambling? What the rabbi did, I don't know if you did this when you were kids. I don't recommend this, by the way. This is just a story. He put his fingers behind his back and crossed his fingers. He said, no. Did you ever do that when you were at school in Hong Kong? I don't know why, crossing your fingers so you could lie. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's what he did. And so, okay, you can go, Rabbi. And the last one was the monk. The judge was a bit dubious by this time. So he said, monk, put your hands on the front. Don't look up to heaven or whatever else. Just answer me straight. Were you gambling? And the monk replied, with whom, Your Honor? With whom? Okay, you can go. So, if you ever go to a conference, always be the last one to speak. Anyway, back to no, we don't sort of play cards, we meditate in the evening. Okay, fair enough. What time do you go to bed? I do have a bed in this hotel. Many of you have been into the cave where I sleep at night. It's on the floor. The mattress is only about that big, that thick. I don't have a bed. So even the monk didn't have a bed. So he said, go to bed. We don't have a bed. We sleep on the floor. Oh, my goodness, said the prisoners. Because even in prison, they have a bed. And they have meals in the evening and goodness knows what else. And one of the prisoners forgot where they were. And they liked this monk. So they said to this monk, that's terrible where you live in a Buddhist monastery. Why don't you come in here and stay with us instead? And he had a point. In an Australian monastery, compared to an Australian prison, it's much more comfortable in the prison than it is in a monastery. You get more food, better beds, entertainment, you can exercise and play sports, so much more you can do. But you can't do that in Bodhinyana monastery. So why is it? There's a waiting list of people trying to get into Bodhinyana monastery. And there's a waiting list of people trying to get out of jail. What is prison? And what is freedom? It's got nothing to do with how comfortable it is. It's got everything to do with whether you want to be there or you want to be somewhere else. In Bodhinyana monastery, the monks and the visitors in the nunnery, the nuns are happy to be there. That's why they feel free. If you want to be somewhere else, that's called prison, no matter what that is. Are you happy to be here in the Novotel Hotel? If you are happy to be here, it really is a hotel, it's freedom. If you want to be somewhere else, this is Novotel prison. Doesn't matter how comfortable it is. If you don't want to be here, you've made yourself live in a jail. And once you see that, it gives a huge amount of understanding about Dhamma. I don't know which ones of you are married, which ones aren't married, in a gay relationship, lesbian relationship, ordinary relationship, or weird relationship. I don't care. Are you happy to be in that relationship? If you are, then you're free. If you don't like that relationship, it's problematical, then you're in jail. Any place you don't want to be is prison. After this retreat is over, when you go back to work, when you go back, are you happy to be at work? Or are you trying to get out as soon as you can to go back home? If you're trying to get out as soon as you can, your workplace is a prison. If you're in a traffic jam, going to work or going home, are you happy to be in a traffic jam, or do you want to get out as soon as you can? You can make the traffic jam a prison for yourself. And are you in a body which you're happy with? Or is it sick, got cancer, aching, dying? Would you like to get out of that body and get another one? If that's the case, then your body is a prison for you. How do you escape from the prisons which you make of life? Change your attitude. Be happy to be here. It may not be the best job in the world, but at least it pays the bills. Yeah, the traffic in Hong Kong, you may get stuck, but it's not as bad as, say, Bangkok used to be. I remember some disciples, they used, years and years ago, they used to live in this place called Satorn, and they bought a plot of land in Sukhumvit. When they went to look at it, they went in an ox cart. That's the only transport they had. It took about 3 hours to get from Satorn to Sukhumvit in an ox cart. Many, many years later, they had a lovely car. It still took 3 hours to get from Saturn to Sukhumvit in a Mercedes. So, are you happy to be there? You know, sometimes I get caught in traffic jams. When I get caught in traffic jams, I think the last one when I was visiting UK. So we may not make the talk in time. I said, great. I can meditate in the car instead of being asked questions and give talks about the same old jokes I've heard so many times before. So, is being stuck in a traffic jam, prison, or freedom? Being sick. I already mentioned that I really felt sort of disappointed I never got COVID. Because over there, in Perth, the COVID was very light, but then you got 7 days retreat. The monks would bring you food, and because you were sick, they'd ask, what special things do you need? And because you were sick, you had the freedom, according to the Vinaya, to ask for special food you need. You're not supposed to ask on other times. So there's many advantages of being sick. People would come and visit, and they'd say, I'm sorry, Ajahn Brahm is sick, he'll have COVID. They'd leave me alone then. These days, he said, oh, someone's visiting you. They said, they come all the way from Hong Kong to see you. Okay, I'll talk to them. But if I had COVID, no, I couldn't. It was against the law. I was so disappointed. So, not really, obviously, might be exaggerating, but nevertheless, you can see advantages. Do you like going to the dentist? When I go to the dentist, I see all the advantages of being in the dentist chair. First of all, it's the most comfortable, not really a chair, like a couch I've ever been on. It actually adjusts to the shape of your body. And it's so comfortable. And the dentist puts all this stuff in my mouth. Even if he asks the Dhamma questions, there's no way in the world I can answer it because I've got such amount of stuff, in my mouth. So at last I can be quiet. Sometimes people ask me questions, like I said, in Hong Kong, in the university or the Polytechnic or something. No, that wasn't there. It was, I think, there's a jockey club auditorium. I think that time years ago, when people really sort of asked me question after question after question, when I finally finished walking out, and he really needed to go to the toilet. I'm a human being. I need to go to the toilet as well. And you wouldn't let me. And just another question, Ajahn Brahm. Look, you only come here once a year, and there's some really important questions. And eventually I got to the men's toilet. You had to go right through the auditorium and turn out of the auditorium. That's where the toilets were. Oh, I'd made it. And I thought, wow, at last I can go into one of the toilet cubicles and do my business. And there's this young man who was washing his hands. He'd just been in the toilet. Ajahn Brahm, can I ask you a question of my meditation? It was in the monks' toilets. They couldn't leave me alone. They even happened in Singapore airport. In those days, many of the disciples from Singapore, they used to work for Singapore Airlines. So they used to work inside the terminal. So they met me at the gate. I had gone out from the airport. They met me there, gave me a nice cup of tea. And I just come from a flight, I think, from US. And I was jet lagged, tired. But, they wanted to ask me some questions. And I thought, how can I get out of this? And I thought, I need to go to the toilet. True story, don't make these ones up. I said, okay, go to the toilet. We'll wait for you afterwards. And so as soon as you went into the toilet, I thought, I can have some peace. I was going to sit there for maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes, get a nice relax. You know what happened? The toilet attendants in Singapore Airlines are very poor people. But this toilet attendant, he'd actually either read one of my books or seen one of my talks. He said, oh, Ajahn Brahm. He said, look, my meditation's not good. I don't understand much Dhamma, but you're a very good monk. And he talked with me for a while, and he said, can I make a donation? And I knew he was really poor. And it really touched me. And usually I would just say no. But it was a rare opportunity for him. And I said, well, look, I cannot receive any money myself. But if you put it in an envelope and send it to this address, it will get to me or get to our accountant. And I wrote the address of Bodhinyana Monastery on one of the pieces of paper which you used to wipe your hands. That's all you had. You can imagine just how I felt when an envelope came with his donation in it over to Perth. It really touched my heart. A poor fellow wanted to make a donation. He did it as best he possibly could. It was hard for him. That meant so much. That's why I included it in the story. But anyway, where was I going with this? I get one story leads to another, and it goes all over the place. But nevertheless, just that's what it's like in being free. If only I'd have remembered my own teachings or the Buddha's teachings and said, okay, if you want to ask me a question, fine. Yes, I want to go to the toilet, but I just want to be here. And if this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, but I'll maybe talk about it later, about that story of the Emperor's 3 questions. This could have been taught by the Buddha, but it actually came from Leo Tolstoy. When is the most important time? It's always now. It's the only time. That's one of the reasons why when you're coming back again, Ajahn Brahm, to Hong Kong, what are you talking about? I'm already here, right now. You try not to think of tomorrow. I decided years ago not to plan too much. Because you know what I found out? You can experiment if you wish. I was a scientist, experiment. When I don't make plans for tomorrow, a lot of things go wrong. But when I do make plans for tomorrow, they go wrong anyway. Either way, they go wrong. So I decide to enjoy myself before they go wrong. And sometimes when you don't make plans, really interesting things happen. Things which you don't expect. And you always got confidence. People are kind. I'm adaptable. You can always do something. So I'm not really worried about the future. But the present is far more important. But Ajahn Brahm, what if you die? I haven't died yet. Stop worrying about the future. If you're worried about dying, then you're making dying just more possible. Have you ever noticed that? How worrying and fear are usually counterproductive. The thing you're afraid of, you make more likely to happen when you're afraid of it. I've seen that many times with relationships. So a guy just loves his wife so much, he's really afraid that she may leave him. And so they just are doubtful about you. The wife says that I still love you, darling. You don't need to sort of send private investigators after me. He said, but I'm just worried that you might leave me. And I think many of you wives may have experienced things like that. And it destroys the relationship. The thing you're worried about, you make happen. Or those with cancer. For over, I think about 35 years now, every year in Perth, I've been going to visit the Cancer Support Association. They invited me over there because meditation was known as a great assistance or cure for people who have had cancer or have cancer. So every year I go over there to give a talk, and every year they come to Bodhinyana Monastery for a visit. I've been doing that for such a long time. And I remember asking them, why? Why do you always keep inviting me? And then they gave the answer that the very first time I went there, one of the women there, she'd had breast cancer. It was very scary and painful for her. She had to have the mastectomy, which is very tough for a woman to have. And then she was in full remission. She got over the cancer. Well done. But she was so afraid. It was so traumatic for her going through the therapy for breast cancer that she asked the question, first time I went, Ajahn Brahm, I'm so worried. What would happen if the breast cancer came back again? She was really terrified of that possibility. And I answered without a pause, Madam, what would happen if it didn't come back? That's what I said. And that really hit her. It's always like you see the two black bricks in the wall, and I was saying, look at the other bricks in the wall. What would happen if it didn't come back? It never did come back. But she came back every year to see me. And it's simple things like that. The word went around that, there was a monk here who wasn't the same as others, who could actually, teach something which he hadn't seen before and hadn't seen its power. Imagine if you're always worried about it coming back, you're increasing the probability that cancer will return just through worry. When you start thinking, what happens if it didn't come back? Then you can live your life with joy and happiness and no worry. You can relax more and lessen the chance of it recurring. So that's why I always would go back there every year. I think in July, they're coming to the monastery again for a visit. And even, I was saying the other day about the holy water thing, that I do the holy water, it's good fun. But because this Cancer Support Association was in the electorate of the Premier of Western Australia at the time, so they lobbied him, and the government gave this huge grant of a few $1 million to upgrade the facilities at the Cancer Support Association's premises. And once it was completed, they invited the Premier of the state together with not another VIP, another VIM. That was me, very bored muck. Just the two of us, the Premier and I. And I said, what on earth? There's so many other important people in this world. Why just invite me? What about one of the big donors, the wealthy donors, got lots of money? I've got nothing to give. So no, we want to give you the wisdom. So I did bring the holy water bowl to bless the place. And I also asked permission from the bodyguards of the Premier. He said, okay, if I splash a bit of water over the Premier. So because you do it with a big smile, you can get away with that, with a lot of joy and happiness and blessing. So these are some of the things which you can do. And it all started just with a story. Are you happy to be here? When you're meditating, you got your eyes closed. Doesn't matter what you're experiencing, whether it's a jhana or restlessness, sloth and torpor, or pain somewhere. Are you happy to be here? Even with pain, with disappointment. That's why I say that this is all dog proof, the mango tree. If you are happy to be here, then you feel the meaning of freedom. You're free. You don't want anything. Then you know what meditation is, what letting go is. You'll be happy to be here. And sometimes you shock nurses and doctors. You've got a cancer, you're going to die soon. Why are you so happy? Even once, there's this one lady I remember that she had terminal cancer. And once she found out what it was, lung cancer, And she called me. I went to visit her in hospital. And we were telling jokes together. And she said, please tell the other Thai people, yes, they can come and visit me, but not until I'm in my coffin. Ha ha ha. She didn't want other people's emotional problems to be loaded onto her in the last days of life. She wanted that freedom and peace. And it was a wonderful lady. But anyway, as soon as I went out of her room, this nurse grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me into another room. I'm glad you've come. I'm glad you've come. She said, I'm the matron, the head nurse of this facility. I'm glad you've come. That lady you just visited, she's in denial. She doesn't realize what's happening. And I said, what are you talking about? We've just been discussing her funeral arrangements, and what she wants and how she wants it to be done. And this nurse was actually, the word I was going to say was gobsmacked, discombobulated. You know what those words mean? You do? Oh. Well, that means so totally confused. In her life as a nurse, and now she was a head nurse, she'd never seen anything like this before. Someone who just found out they're going to die from lung cancer in a few days, and she was totally at peace, cracking jokes with everybody. The jokes weren't sort of hiding anything. She was just at ease with her life. She was happy to be there, even though she was dying. She lived a good life. She was content. She looked after her kids. And she had amazing kids. One of the kids won the MasterChef competition over in Perth. Brilliant chef. They're all really amazing, those kids she had. And also that I had to explain to the nurse, sometimes this happens. They're going to die anyway. Whether you worry about it, whether you're afraid, whether you cry and scream or whatever, the death is going to happen. Why not enjoy it? You're happy to be... It's okay to laugh. That's challenging for people, but why not? And she did it. I remember a doctor telling me at the funeral, actually he gave a little talk because he was impressed. She died with class, he said. He'd never seen anyone die so well before. He said, I wish if, the doctor's saying, I wish if I had some terminal disease like that, I could die as beautifully as she died. So that's challenging, but it's true. And that just shows just what freedom really is. It doesn't matter where you are, in a healthy body, in a sick body, an old body, a young body, a sort of wealthy, poor. What really matters, are you happy to be here? You're meditating, it's aching, pain, you're not getting anywhere. Why do you want to get anywhere when you're happy to be here? And when you're happy to be here, then actually you don't go anywhere. You stay here, you go inside. That was supposed to be the talk today. The Emperor's Three Questions, the 1,000-petal lotus. You go in to the next stage of meditation. In and in and in. You never go on to anything. Wherever you are right now, you go deeper into it. And that's where you find the jhanas, liberation, everything. Inside where you already are right now. Go to its center. And the center of the center. And the center of 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 the center. That's how it works. Thank you for listening. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Now I'm going to be happy to be in the interview room for all of those interviews which you might have. But you don't have to go there. If you're happy to be here, that's fine.